Hi, welcome to Dreamsical Designs by Danielle. In this video, I'll be sharing my creative journey as I design the dress I'm wearing right now. The design features a circle skirt, flared sleeves, and a plunging back cowl neckline. Along the way, I'll share my design process and my essential sewing tips to help you bring your own creations to life. Let's get started. The beauty of basic blocks is that you never have to start the pattern making process from scratch. Once you've created and perfected the fit, they become a solid foundation, allowing you to design anything you can dream of with ease and confidence. If you don't yet have basic blocks, I've got you covered. Watch my other videos on how to draft those. With that in mind, follow along as I show you just how easy these design transformations can be. Cowl necklines are one of those unique designs that just work. Timeless, elegant, and flattering on pretty much everyone. But I wanted to mix things up, so I made the back of my dress the real standout with a deep, dramatic cowl plunge. Starting with my back basic bodice block, I mark a temporary point on my shoulder line to make it 2 inches long. Next, I measure the distance from my center back to my waistline, which is how long I want my cowl to be. You can customize the length to be as modest or as bold as you like. On my new pattern, I draw a temporary vertical line extending from the center back, matching my desired cowl length. And now for my quick and easy method for creating a cowl neckline. Starting with my basic block aligned at the center back of my new pattern piece, I anchor my pencil at the point where my waistline intersects with my outer side seam. Then, I pivot my bodice block outwards, stopping when my shoulder point intersects with my vertical line. I trace my shoulder line, armhole curve, and side seam curve up until the waistline. I draw a horizontal line from my shoulder point to the center back to complete my cowl neckline. Lastly, I use my flexible curve ruler to redraw the waistline at roughly the same angle, making sure it is perpendicular when it intersects the center back. I know the waistline looks a bit unusual right now on the pattern piece, but once the cowl neck drapes into place, the back waistline will naturally settle at the same height as the front, curving smoothly around your body, just like this. Starting with a copy of my front basic bodice block, I mark a point on my shoulder line to make it 2 inches long, to match my back shoulder line. Next, I draw the curve of my neckline using my flexible curve ruler, making sure that it is perpendicular to the center front. The final step is to end the bodice at the waistline to match the dress bodice back. A flared sleeve is fitted at the top, like a classic sleeve, but flares out dramatically at the bottom for a fun, flowy effect. I felt this type of sleeve pairs well with my chosen fabric and with my deep, dramatic cowl plunge. And it's easy to create. Flared sleeves are created using the slash and spread method. I divide my sleeve into 4 equal segments. Next, I cut along the vertical lines, starting from the bottom of my sleeve and stopping just before I reach the bicep line. This was the slash part. Now I am ready to start spreading my cut pieces. The more you spread the pieces, the more flare the sleeve will be. I decided to spread my pieces by about 2 times the original width. A helpful tip is to use a tape measure to check that the front and back pieces are evenly spaced. This keeps everything symmetrical. Once happy with the spread, I use tape to hold the pieces in place. To finish up my sleeve, I redraw the bottom sleeve curve. I love circle skirts. Effortlessly graceful, universally flattering, and an absolute joy to twirl in. They're also easy to design. All you need is the waist circumference and some simple math. Using the waist measurement from my upper bodice blocks, I divide it by 6.28 to determine the radius for a full circle skirt. Since I'm cutting the skirt on the fold twice, I only need to draft a quarter of the circle. I mark my radius using my tape measure and repeat the process for the skirt's length. I am using 2 circle skirts of different lengths, one that stops above my knees and is the longer one, and the second that is 3 inches shorter than the longer one. The shorter one is basically acting like a lining since my fabric is a bit see-through. And that's it for my design process. Here are my 4 final pattern pieces. The back neck ribbon ties are just a rectangle, so no pattern is needed. I'll show you the measurements during the upcoming cut scene. Two essential steps I never skip before starting my sewing process for stretchy fabrics are to apply interfacing strips within the seam allowance on the back shoulder seams of my bodice fabric, and to stay stitch the neckline and armhole curves to prevent stretching. First step is to attach the front and back bodice of the dress at the shoulder and side seams, and I needed to do this for both the outer and lining fabric, which is just a duplicate of the outer fabric since I'm using itself as its own lining. A helpful tip when sewing stretchy fabrics is to use a walking foot or a knit foot. In my case, my fabric kept getting caught in the walking foot, so I opted for my knit foot. I added ribbon ties at the back neck to secure the cowl, preventing it from slipping off my shoulders and any unwanted wardrobe malfunctions. The ties give me the freedom to move with confidence, which is essential for twirling. I fold the ribbon ties lengthwise with right sides together, then sew along the length with a narrow seam allowance. Using a loop turner, I turn them right side out, press them flat, and finally fold in the raw edges at one end and hand stitch them closed. To make it easier to attach the ribbon ties, I place a basting stitch within the seam allowance just below the shoulder seams on the back dress bodice. Next, I attach the outer fabric and lining by placing them right sides together and clipping them in place at the neckline. I then sew around the neckline, trim the excess seam allowance with pinking shears, turn the pieces right side out, and press it flat. Finally, I top stitch around the neckline for a polished look. Sleeves can be tricky to attach, but with enough practice, it becomes much easier. Here's my process for attaching sleeves. First, I sew the side seams together. Next, I normally hem the wrist line, but I like the look of the fabric's raw edge, so I'm leaving it untouched. To prep the sleeve armholes for sewing, I place 2 rows of basting stitches in between the armhole notches and within the seam allowance. On my second row of basting stitch, I increase the tension of my sewing machine to a 6 to auto-gather the fabric. I place the sleeve armhole and bodice armhole right sides together, lining up my side and shoulder seams. Then, I finesse the gathered fabric to evenly distribute it, smoothing out any puckers for a clean finish. Before using the sewing machine, I prefer to hand sew a basting stitch to keep everything in place. This extra step makes machine sewing faster and easier as it prevents the fabric from shifting. To manage the slippery fabric, I basted the outer and lining bodice pieces together, along with both circle skirts, temporarily securing these layers. This made attaching them much easier. Same as with the sleeves, I like the look of the fabric's raw edge, so I did not hem the circle skirts. Attaching the circle skirts to the dress bodice is simple. Just align both skirt pieces right sides together against the bodice waistline, secure with clips, and stitch around the entire perimeter. To maintain proper stretch at my waistline, I then remove the basting stitches, leaving only the permanent stretch stitching in place. And that's it. My plunging back cowl dress is done. Let's take a moment to appreciate how beautiful and fun this dress turned out. And just look at that stunning back cowl neckline. The fabric I chose gives this dress a chic disco flair, and the double circle skirts make it irresistibly fun to twirl and dance in. I literally twirled myself dizzy filming this. It's perfect for any cocktail party or event where you want to shine. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you make your own dress, please tag me. I'd love to see how it turned out. Happy sewing!